And we are live. What's going on, guys? Hope you guys are doing well. This is my first ever, and I probably won't make do this too often, but my double Sunday. So if you joined me earlier, I was with Stevania, who's great, and this time I actually have, I listen. I not an intentional thing, but I've only had writers in terms of comics so far. But that's about to change because we have an artist, not just any artist. We actually have an artist who have worked with, not necessarily directly, but I was an editor on Hunter Ninja Bear, which was the first comic I ever worked on. And the anchor for that comic was Rob Hunter, who has worked on everything from DC, Marvel, all that stuff, and has got a new book out. So without further ado, let me introduce you guys to the great Rob Hunter. Rob, how you doing?
Dude, I'm doing fantastic, man, and I'm here to fuck shit up. So let's start fucking shit
Sounds good, man. Sounds good. So, it started with Phenom, but going back, I do want to ask just right off the bat, how'd you get into comics?
I was a kid and I liked comics, and I always read comics. And then as a teenager, I was a huge fan of collecting comics. And then in college, I realized I did not like math enough for engineering. I was
Mm.
like, wow, I was in all the science and math classes because my friends were in the science and math classes, but I didn't pay attention enough to really, like, oh wow, this math is I got a B, I got a B plus. Okay, fantastic. But all my fellow students were all like A's, A's, A's. Like they would laugh. They would laugh. They would read a word problem out in homework and laugh and go, oh, that's what they wanted us to do. And I'd read it and go, I don't, I don't know what the F, I don't know the F they're asking for. So then I just kind of, the only other thing I knew was comics. So I was like, I guess I'm going to be a comic book artist.
So you started late then in college.
Yeah.
You hadn't had you considered it before
No,
college?
no, I mean,
Really?
I doodled on my notebook in school, being bored out of my mind, in high school. But no, I just was like, hey, I guess I'm going to be a penciler, and that was
Wow.
kind of it. Well, when you're 19 years old and you think of all the 11-year old, all your competition has been drawing since they were like 11
Yeah,
or
that's
8 or
yeah.
9. You know, um, it does inspire you to draw all the time. I was in art class and we did a little go around the room and ask everybody in drawing one or drawing two. It was one of those. And the teacher asked everybody, how much do you draw on a daily basis that's not part of homework? And most people said not at all. They'd say maybe an hour on the weekend. And he came to me and I'm like, well, 2 or 3 hours a day. And then obviously I got my homework and I have a part-time job. And everybody just kind of looked at me stunned, like, what's happening? Why are you drawing, you know, why are you drawing 2 to 3 hours a day? And we were all artists in high school, and now we draw maybe an hour a day on the weekends if we feel like it. And my teacher said, he goes, hey, Rob changed his career path at 19, and he realizes, you know, if he wants to actually be a professional artist, and he goes, and any of you who want to be professional artists, it's not about taking drawing one and drawing two and taking painting and going, look at me, I'm a professional artist. He's like, you have to be better than everyone else. He goes,
Hmm.
that's your competition. Your competition isn't the guy sitting next to you in school. Your competition is everyone.
Hmm.
And even then he said, and probably depending on what kind of artist you want to be, it's the world. I don't,
Hmm.
he that was, but this is like 91, so the internet is barely exists. And nowadays, your competition is the world.
Oh yeah.
There's a dude in the Philippines who his rich uncle got him, a computer or a laptop, or he's learning how to digitally paint on the screen, and he knows he's a poor kid, and he knows that's his way out of the slums, if you want to call it that, or that's his way out of the suburbs. It's you know that's his way out of the Philippines, and wherever he wants to go. you know there's people who know that art will take you anywhere you want depending on how hard you work. And you got to have skill, and you do have to have that X factor.
Hmm.
But the harder you work, the more that you polish that X factor to, you know, copper penny, a quarter, or a diamond. It just a lot of it is work.
Oh
Um,
yeah. That's
so
one of the things. I mean, I never really put in all the time to draw. I'd always get like bored after seconds because because I imagine it in my head, and I'm a writer, and so that. But I mean, I have so much respect for the artists, and you're so right about even like the Philippines. Like they also, on top of everything you said, they charge way cheaper too. Than a lot of a lot of American artists are really struggling with that because these guys can draw very well, and so having that. I mean, going from switching majors so quickly, that's got to have been crazy. I mean, but
it was
when did
scary.
you, yeah, when did you
it
get
was
your,
just,
yeah.
it was really, dude, it was really scary. Um, but I had a cool teacher. I had a teacher who, he had read comic books when he was a kid. So he was cool. He was really like, he was really supportive, and my parents were super supportive. And that's really what it takes, man. At least that's what it took for me. And it
Hmm.
also kind of just was like, hey, man, I'm going to just put my head down and grind. Like,
Hmm.
there was no, if you question yourself, you can question yourself a little bit and
Hmm.
just be like, but you can't, like, uh, I remember being at the Cuber school, and everyone in my room, one guy was like 24 and he had already drawn comic books in Sweden. So he had self-published, he had done some stuff. So he was the wise old man compared to the
Oh,
rest of
right,
us.
right.
So he had lots of advice for us. But the other two guys in the room, because it was a room of, I had three other roommates. Three of us were fucking grinders. We
Hmm.
were like, oh, I'm done with my home. Like, when I finished my homework at the Cuber school, I would practice inking. I would be there, the lights are off and everyone's sleeping, and I'm inking because
Hmm.
I was, I actually, because of my painting class, I actually had picked up a brush before. Other people had never even picked up a brush. So and I saw how much, as a penciler, everyone else was a better penciler than me. Like, I was really at the bottom 50% of ability when it came to drawing, but my inking was a lot better than most of the people in my Cuber class.
Hmm.
There's two classes, there's two groups. There's 10 classes a week.
Oh, wow.
So I kind of, and my other two roommates were way better pencilers than me. So you kind of will gravitate towards what you might be a little better than other people. It's just kind of natural. So that's what I did, dude, and it just, being in a room where everybody else really was grinding, and saw the guys who didn't grind. You know, you you saw the guys that were, like, they try to go to the Cuber school. Like, dude, 10 classes a week means you've got 10 homework assignments a week. There's guys
Hmm.
who had part-time jobs.
Oh
There's
my
guys that
God.
had full-time jobs who were sending money back to their wives. Like, dude, like, what are you doing? They're like, well, I
That's
love comics. And I would just look at him and go, dude, you got to do one thing, and you got to do it better than everyone else. And they would
yeah.
just look at me like, wow, what a weird asshole. I would just be like, I'm like, how much is this school costing? Like, how much is housing costing? How much is all this costing? And you're going to sacrifice like 50% of what you could learn because you have a part-time job after after school,
Yeah.
So, you
That's.
know,
I mean, I've had a good friend of mine who streams a lot. Went to the Kubert school, and it sounds like it was just so much work. I mean, the results show though. Like I've never seen a Kubert school grad. I mean, I'm not saying there aren't any, but like at least all the ones I know, like they can draw super well, and they have such a strong understanding of storytelling and of anatomy and all that, and it really pays off. And it's also interesting here that you were even in college that you really gravitated towards inking because I know by trade typically you're an inker. Um,
yeah.
but
Most of my career, most of my professional credits are inking. I got to do some penciling on Suicide Squad, which
mhm,
that was the beginning. Like, I kind of knew the just that extra creative freedom. Even though I was working so many hours, and I could, like, dude, I worked on issue 5. My editor gave me 5 weeks, and I was working over breakdowns. I think it's breakdowns or layouts. I think it's breakdowns over. Uh, oh man, I'm blanking on his name, but he turned in he turned in tight breakdowns, and I'm just trying to finish the pencils, and then I would ink it. And I spent 5 weeks on issue 5, and my wife she's like flipping through it, going, you know, oh, Captain Boomerang's face is a little weird here.
Oh
And
no.
and I'm like looking at her, and like after she like the fourth critique, I'm like, hey, I spent like 5 weeks on that. So I think we're cool from here. Like you don't need to keep looking at it. I
Yes.
knew that I had so much more to learn, but I already was feeling like just being the inker on a book wasn't enough anymore.
Mhm.
And it kind of planted the seeds. And as the business continued to change, like, dude, that was shit, man. What was it? Suicide Squad was 2017, I think, maybe
Mhm.
2016.
I never read it when it came out, but I remember seeing it when it came out. I remember that one cover. I think it was like I see that one cover of Harley Quinn that I use in the thumbnail, issue
Yeah, the
4.
painted cover everywhere. Yeah, that was yeah. And the guy that was supposed to do the series, was really good at dude. He's an amazing artist, and he was getting, like, if you see some of the pages that he actually finished, he was doing a lot of it on the computer, and he was doing some amazing dude. He was doing some amazing computer techniques with inking that people still aren't doing. Like, there's a couple panels in the issue 4 and issue 4, because he was trying to finish, like, he couldn't pencil, so he's trying to finish some of the pages just to try to be part of the book still.
Mhm.
They are so cool. Like, he was doing, transparent rendering lines over the top of like super rendered lines, and he was doing his version of Jim Lee. But his commercial work kept making him busier and busier. And Jim Starlin told me commercial art, compared to comic books, it pays twice as well and takes half the time, which means that what it does is it pays 4 times as much. So
Wow.
if you're killing yourself on a comic book, knowing that you're turning down stuff that's pays 4 times as much, you can't do that for very long before you're just
Right.
like,
Yeah.
uh, so he got too busy. The editor let me do it for a while, and then when it was over, I was sad. And I think I inked Firestorm. I inked the Firestorm miniseries after that, and the whole time I remember talking to people at a con, going, like, I think there's a new direction for me. I don't know how long it's going to take for me to get there, but the seeds have definitely had been planted back on
Mhm.
Suicide Squad. That not just being an inker, and that part of that was Phenom too.
Yeah, I
Phenom,
was gonna ask about that.
yeah,
I did. How did that come about? Because I know, like your story is one. I hear a lot of the whole slowly kind of getting like from oh my god, I'm here at Marvel and DC to working there and eventually deciding that you're gonna do this independent path. So how
yeah,
did you
yeah.
guys get a? Because I have my Phenom story, but how did you were there? I think from the beginning, right? Like how did you get involved with Phenom?
Oh, it was. Tom called me, and my contract was ending, so I told him, I go, well, my contract's up at DC, and they haven't kept me very busy. Like, I had only done like 4 or 5 issues that year, which is the only way I was able to pay the bills was because they were still reprinting a bunch of stuff. So I would get a quarterly check that was pretty cool. And then I would do something for DC, and then, do a couple books, and then a quarterly check would show up for the royalties because, some trade paperback had come out. So I was able to still pay the bills. But dude, most people say as professional artists, like, if you do get royalties, they're supposed to go right to your savings, and
Hmm.
that's never really where they went. They always carried me through when I had
Hmm.
3 weeks off or a month off or whatever, waiting for a project to start or waiting for work. And dude, I had an exclusive contract with DC, so you assume that means they're going to keep you busy.
And
No,
not the case.
no, the only thing exclusive contract means is we are going to pay you this page rate, and we will try.
Oh
But
man.
unless it's in your contract that says you need to send me 100 pages a month, or you need to send me 20 pages a month, or you need to see it. And dude, can you imagine if I had a contract that said I need 20 pages a month? It would be like week 3.5, and they'd go, "Oh, we haven't set Rob any pages. We'll send him this 20 pages of junk
Yeah,
that
the
needs to
worst
get
books.
they,
Yeah.
yeah, that gets has to get hurried up and go, Rob, you've got 4 days to ink an entire
Yeah.
book. And if you can't do it, we still met our contractual obligation.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Well, there's ways you can get around all this stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Like
no,
the
yeah. Any
worst
kind.
books, like just take the one of those Z-list characters that like,
Hmm.
oh yeah, they can throw
Yeah.
you the
So
worst.
yeah.
But you
So
got to work
contracts.
on some of the biggest stuff. I mean, before talking about, I mean, Justice League, and X-Men in the 90s, Iron Man. I know you did what, like 40 issues of Iron Man?
Oh,
Is that
I
right?
worked on Iron Man for a year. I got to work 6 months with Sean Chen, and then when Sean left, I had a conversation with the editor, and I never had a conversation with the editor before, Bobby Chase.
Really?
So I was like, oh, things just changed. And they brought in a new penciler who was Joe Quesada's assistant
Mm.
penciler. And she was very cool. We used to talk all the time about the
Oh, not
pages.
40 issues, 16. I don't know where I got that
Yeah.
number from.
I wish I had worked on Iron Man for 40 issues.
You know what it was? I think you did like issue 40. Yeah, you ended on issue 40. That was my confusion. Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
completely different.
So I knew things, 6 months were fun, and then 6 months were just different and weird. Because after that, after Iron Man, I went to CrossGen, and
Mhm,
I had 3 years at CrossGen, which was a lot of fun.
mhm.
CrossGen was uh, it was a
Yeah,
company where it was super cool to be able to go into work every day. And I mean, come on, man, the people you're working with are also comic book fans. Can you imagine going into a building where you're doing comic book stuff and you get to hang out with people who love comics? You
yeah,
know, dude, if I won, I won a big lotto and I didn't want to just hang out and work out and watch TV and order stuff off of Amazon, I would start a comic book company where I would move everybody down and put
yeah,
us all in one big building so we could all hang out and work on stuff. But
yeah,
to be honest, you you want to do that, you might as well just burn $100 bills in a barrel and
yeah,
call it a night because it's so expensive. Um,
yeah.
yeah,
Everyone I know that talks about cross-gen, like everyone seems super close in the cross-gen Jays. Even like I was hanging out with Bart Sears, and I was like, "How'd you get involved with Phenom?" And he goes, "Yeah, Rob reached out to me." I was like, "Were you guys at cross-gen or something?" Or I forget
yeah.
if I said that or something, because like everyone from cross-gen seems like there's this camaraderie that they always talk highly of their time, even if it wasn't. From what I understand, it wasn't run well, but it was like one of the coolest experiences ever.
Yeah, yes, yes. And I owe that to Mark Alessi. I mean, he's passed away since then. Um,
Oh, I didn't know
he
that.
was he was a hell of a businessman and a hell of a salesman, but comic books, man, comic books are they're a crazy scene. And his business model that they set up was when Mark was worth 4 times as much money, and um, his stock went down to a quarter of what it was worth, but they went with the same business model. They didn't change direction at all, and because of that, they had a plan where they could lose like a certain amount of money every year when Mark was worth 4 times as much, but they kept the same plan even though he was worth a quarter of it, but they
Wow.
spent just as much money. So there was a lot of pressure on all those books to perform a lot. They thought, hey, we can lose. I don't I don't remember. We'll just say, hey, we can lose $1 million a year for the next 10 years, and we're fine because this is how much Mark is worth, and we're not going to just lose money for 10 years. At some point, you at least break even, and we'll
Mhm.
still be okay. Well, they didn't have as much money to work with, but they still spent money like they did, and they still release books like they did. Like you
Mhm.
look at those first 4 books that they released, none of those books would really be able to survive. You had Bart Sears on the first, and nothing happened. Bart did some incredible work on that book, But the whole concept of that book was not an action comic book. You can't. And this is when superhero stuff was coming back. Like Marvel started pushing the Avengers and all their other books. And CrossGen is saying, we're not going to do superheroes. And you're like,
right.
But everybody already did the Top Cow thing. Everybody already did the, Witchblade stuff. And people want superheroes again, Mark. And you're saying we're not going to do superheroes. We'll never do superheroes. So it was a weird bad timing, and it was a weird business model to start with. And it never, like, if you look at those first four books sunk CrossGen, because the next set of books, like Chuck Dixon came in, and they had Ruse and Negation and Crux. All those books were a lot stronger than the first four, and they sold better. And those are the books everybody remembers.
You worked on Crux, right?
I did. I worked on Crux with Sergio. Yeah,
I love Sergio.
Yeah, he's a super nice guy. Oh, yeah. He's amazing talent, and he's another guy who, after CrossGen, he'd done a bunch of stuff for Marvel and DC. He went indie. He ended up with some big hits on Action Bible.
Oh yeah, I got that from him. I got that signed. Yeah. Even then, I was just asking a friend, like randomly. He was just a friend who's Christian. I'm like, have you read the Action Bible? I was like, dude, I love the Action Bible. I'm like, oh, I know that artist. They're like, no way.
Yeah,
that transcended comics, even if you didn't care about comics at all.
Yeah, that and but that was, he was the perfect talent for that, because you needed. I mean, how many pages is the Action Bible?
I don't know. I haven't gone through it yet, but it's a big one. It's like, huge.
Yeah, and he does all the pages, and you needed someone who was talented and really fast. Someone who could say, I've got to do X amount of pages a day, and he'll do X amount of pages a day. He's not going to go back and fidget with stuff. He knows what the project's supposed to be. He knows his deadline, and he knows how many pages he needs to do. And so he is the perfect artist for that project. And I think he did two of them. I think there's two of them now or something. So
it was like a second book that it wasn't. I think it was just like like Heroes and Villains or something like that. Because I got that from him too.
Yeah. So CrossGen led me to man, I'm blanking, but CrossGen led me to DC, and then DC led me to Phenom. And Phenom, I got to help build the company. I got to help. Like, Tom would throw me ideas, and I'm like, hey, this is cool, this is not. Or he'd say, like for Hunter Ninja Bear, he sent me the script, the movie, like a movie style script that he had done. And he says, who do you think could write this? And I read it, and I'm like, Chuck Dixon, man. Chuck Dixon would be perfect for this. And he's like, do you think we can get a hold of him? And I'm like, I can email him on Facebook. Yeah. And it's because I worked with Chuck at CrossGen. So, but that gave me the bug, dude. That just kind of furthered the seeds of I want to do my own thing. I don't want to just be an inker. I mean, inking at Phenom was a lot of fun, but to be honest, phone calls and making decisions and contacting people, that was more fun than inking. So,
you were an editor too, right? Like you were
I would say Tom pretty much took over a lot of the editing, and I'd be more of I was the comic book guy. I was the art director. I'd say I was more the this colorist, this penciler, why don't we get a hold of this writer? This writer's awesome. Maybe this writer will do it. So it was more of like an editor / art director kind of thing at Phenom. And but having that type of just more creative freedom and more creative influence on a project, that's how I'm here with Death Raider. Like, a lot of the stuff I learned from Tom, and a lot of the stuff I just learned in the last few years was like, okay. And then Andy, the whole time was explaining Comicsgate to me and explaining YouTube and live streaming. And I still kind of didn't get it for a couple of years. And it wasn't until he's just like, dude, you just gotta kind of have to do it. You gotta jump online, man. You gotta go for it. It's the only way to.
CrossGen guy, right?
Yes, exactly.
There we go. Yeah, another Cubert school. Was he? Were you at Cubert school with him?
No. Andy is a year older than me,
Oh, okay.
and I went to Kubert school. I had already went to college for 3 years and then went to the Kubert school. So I
Oh, okay.
completely missed. And Andy went all 3 years, and I still
Mhm.
missed Andy when I went because I only went to the Kubert school for a year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I had a roommate who told me comic book business is dying, bro. He goes this
That's
because
lightning.
well, it was 92. So this is like Jim Lee's making his most money ever. This is when
Yeah.
Wildstorm, this is Wildcats. Like while I was there and Wildcats 4 came out and everyone's talking about how Jim Lee made 250 grand. Just his check was 250 grand off of Wildcats. And we're like, oh my God, we're gonna get into comic books and I'm gonna have a Corvette and I'm gonna have a big
Oh,
beautiful
right.
house and this is gonna be fantastic. And you know, 93 they nosedive like really fast and it just kept
Mm.
dropping and dropping. Um, and I had my roommate was from Europe and he said, dude, he goes, the European comic market is dying right now. He goes, it's taking a big hit. The American market will be, he goes, it might be a couple years behind, but he goes, the same thing's going to happen. He goes, Rob, if you want to get into comics, you're not gonna be able to get into comics as a penciler right now. You got to work on your inking and try to work on just your inking and try to get into comics that way while you still have the opportunity. So, almost 30 years later, I'm like, I don't want to be just an inker.
Yeah. Well, that was good though. It sustained you. I mean, got you to this
Yeah.
point. You've got like a lot of titles, that you've worked on because of that. So, I mean, that guy. You still keep in touch with that guy or no?
You know what? The last time I saw him at Pittsburgh Con, and it must be, man, it's dude, it's been over 20 years. It's been over 20 years, and I talked to him. He seemed pretty cool. He was actually doing some work for Top Cow, but he was so talented. Like, dude, he had done animation commercials when he was in Sweden. He penciled and inked himself. He, you know, uh, he was one of those guys that he is one of those guys that you could just kind of plug into anything. Like if comic book starts getting squirrely, he could go down the street and get a job at an ad agency doing stuff. And I imagine that he probably finally just said comic books are getting weird. His
Mm.
name's David Bowler, and he
David
probably,
Bowie.
yeah, he did the last thing I knew that he did was he did some Top Cow stuff. I imagine he probably went into either fine art or ad agency stuff,
You did
commercial
some
art.
Top Cow stuff too, right?
Yeah, I did. I worked at Top Cow for like a year and a half, maybe 2 years. Um, they would send like I think the biggest project I worked on was I did a bunch of stuff with Pat Lee.
Hmm.
So we did Cyberforce. We did a bunch of
Oh,
Cyberforce issues. Yeah, it's funny because when I first started doing stuff with Top Cow, they sent me all their books. Like, hey, here's these variant covers. Like, I'm like, I would just get this box of all these cool, Tomb Raider books and all this stuff. And then while I was working on like Cyberforce, I didn't even get copies of Cyberforce.
really?
I didn't even get copies of the books I worked
The
on.
work.
Yeah. So it's really hard to remember what I worked on at Top Cow because I actually never saw the books. I
And
just
did
remember
you
the
you never
pages.
see the scripts as an anchor, right? You don't.
Um,
Or do you?
no, if there was something confusing, like I would occasionally ask for the
Yeah.
script because I would be like, I'm staring at a panel and I don't know what's going on. And then the editor would send me the script and I go, okay, cool, thanks. I appreciate that. That especially when I would work with the Brazilian artists, sometimes the translations would be weird.
Right.
Like there was one panel in Cable X Force. I think it was 95 I worked on. And the penciler literally drew a wall and it was supposed to be like wall of energy, but he just drew a wall because of the translation was wrong. And so I just went in and just added curvy crackles into the wall so it looked like a wall of energy, silly stuff like that. But usually I didn't have to see the script. You're
That's
just
cool.
you look at the pencils and for the most part, you could tell exactly what's going on. If it's a good pencil, what's going on. So
That's really cool. Yeah, that's so I do have a question as how you got involved with Tom Fenoglio. Like how did you guys end up how did he because you said he called you. Did you guys know each other or
no, he was in the comic book store, and Tom said that Joe said, "Hey, how about this guy? He's working on Suicide Squad," and that was when the Suicide Squad movie just got announced. So I got a lot of extra attention that I was just working on the book, but because they announced that the movie was being made, I actually did get some extra attention, through my website because of that.
oh wow.
And so my contractor was coming up, and I said, "Hey, we can talk after my contract's over." And that him and Joe flew to Florida or flew to Tampa, and we had dinner and we talked about a bunch of stuff. We talked about I was going to pencil and ink the project Soul Project, which now it's a different title. It's had a few different titles.
Which one is that? That's
The one that Ace is working on. The Ace is
okay.
penciling.
I don't think I
Yeah,
saw that. I did meet Ace. He's another great guy too.
yeah. He's a
I
super
walked
nice
by
guy.
with like a phenom cap, and we
Yeah,
just
yeah,
recognize each other. Yeah,
yeah.
he's a really
So
nice guy.
originally I was going to work on that, but while I was working on the designs, Tom wanted everything to be cleaner. And I mean, you see the Death Raider artwork. I like the
Hmm.
render the shit out of stuff. It's lots
Oh
of
yeah.
blacks, lots of rendering. So that didn't really connect. And then I was like, well, um, if you need an anchor on this book, it would still be a lot of fun to work with you guys. And then Ace came along, and I inked a few pages, but Ace's pencils, it's hard to describe, but the way Ace's pencils are, you know, uh, it doesn't really work for inks. So, and Ivan is the perfect colorist to color someone whose
Nunez, right?
pencils are, yeah, yep, whose pencils are the way Ace pencils. So after that, Tom was pitching me ideas, and we went from there. We went for the Hunter Ninja Bear, and then we now also Star Riders.
Yep, I worked
Star
on both of
Riders,
those.
yep. Now Star Riders is in. They're finishing up the colors on Star Riders, so that hopefully will be out in. I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure when
Yeah, I'm
Star
not sure
Riders.
either.
Yeah, I don't
You
know
would
when
know
that's
better
going to be
than I
finished.
would, so I
Yeah,
guarantee there's no information I have about Phenom that you don't have 10 times more. You know.
but yeah, and that has led me here to Death Raider and Comicsgate
Yeah.
and
Let me
crowdfunding.
pull that up. So
Oh
Death
yeah.
Raider, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. So you really this is really cool just seeing your style. Do you spend a lot of time how do you go about penciling? Because you're typically an inker. How do you go about
Dude, it's I do the basic drawing on the computer, and then I print it out on the page, and then I finish off the pencils, and then I go on and I do the inks. And then I add a bunch of, I mean, you can see how textured the pages are.
Mhm.
I'm adding a lot of gray tone that I kind of indicated in the pencils, but then I'm staring at the page and I'm playing. You know,
Yeah.
I'm playing with the inks, I'm playing with the textures, I'm playing with all the gray tones, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And my favorite thing about Death Raider in this crowdfunding is um, the word is synergy. And
Mm.
as we scroll, you'll see the corporate word synergy because those are the books.
Do you want me to
Like
scroll down first or play the trailer first? What would you rather me do?
so play the trailer. The
All
trailers,
right, we'll play the
yeah.
trailer first.
And I gotta load up the new trailer
Oh, you
still.
got another trailer?
Well, it's the same trailer but with heavier music.
I'm taking shots at the enemy. I'm gonna make it to the top, leave a legacy. If I got something to say, you better let me speak. Turn it up a new degree, bitch, you ain't seen anything. I pop off with the new rock, electronic, blow the sonic groove up. I'm too honest when I take a few shots. They're too toxic, need to take the news off. You cannot save me, 'cause I don't need saving. It's everything I've been chasing. all here for the taking. Don't wanna test your luck with me. I think I've had enough disease.
That's a great trailer.
That Jimmy Reyes, he did that trailer.
Oh,
That's
Jimmy
awesome.
did that?
Jimmy did the trailer, dude. And Jimmy,
Alright.
he actually changed the music for me recently, and I just keep forgetting I gotta upload the new file so I can, the heavier music. But yeah, you can. So we have the different things. We've got like Massive Death, which is all 3 books and all 3 PDFs, and then there's like Death Raider PDFA. There's 3 PDFs because one is black and white, and then the third PDF is no lettering at all, so it's straight black and white.
Oh,
That's
just the
folks.
art?
Yeah,
Wow,
it's just there
that's
because people.
smart.
Yeah, dude, people keep asking for like all these different versions. So I'm trying, and like with the books, the actual printed books, it's book A is the cover that we see. Book B is the this, I call it the tune-up cover, and it will be colored. And then book C is a black and white, but there's still the lettering, because I couldn't see, at least at this point, putting out a book that had like is just like the PDF where it's stripped, where it's just the artwork. It's like, well, let's wait and see how everybody responds to the book itself before they're like, dude, we just want an art book now.
Right.
So
I mean, that's great though that you can just do one comic book, and then you could, if people are demanding, listen, man, people want less, it's okay, just pay for it. I feel like
well, dude, it's also I spend a lot of time in the chat where I say, hey everybody, what's going on, and I'll read, like Ethan will have a 2 or 3 or 4 hour live stream, and I'm already doing a bunch of live streams, and I'm just like, I'm gonna just chill and read some of these comments in chat. And dude, I was reading a lot of like people they want the books, but the shipping, if they live in another country, and that's not our fault, man. That's just the cost of shipping. Shipping is kicking the shit out of people,
right?
Or shipping, or just in general, the way the economy is, the cost of the book, or the cost of the shipping, or the combination, and also the timing, like the time that people have to wait. So I would read these comments in chat and go, well, what can I deliver to Comicsgate and crowdfunding that's different? And first step is PDFs that are dramatically cheaper. Like, dude, I'll get you you want to read the book, you're a fan of my artwork, I'm going to get you a PDF, and I'm going to get you a PDF as cheap as possible, so you can read the book and you can enjoy it, and you don't necessarily need the copy. And another thing is if like my first stretch goal, if you scroll down a little bit,
which was that?
Not on that one.
No, right?
Yeah. The first stretch goal is.
Did I pass it?
No. You keep going.
Okay.
There's there's a lot of artwork. Like, I'm thinking, how can
it's
I make
great. I mean, it's great. It shows off a lot.
Thank you. There's just stretch goals. The first stretch goal is download. After it goes in demand, if we hit that first stretch goal, everybody, you get a chapter every month. So when people talk about waiting a year or waiting 8 months, and hey man, I paid for the book and I got to wait so long, everybody's going to get they're going to get a PDF every month of the latest chapter, and that's penciled ink, colored, and lettered, so that obviously it's not going to be 20 pages like Marvel and DC. They're not going to get 20 pages a month, but they're probably going to get 8 to 10 pages a month of the latest chapter of the book, and go, oh dude, this is like getting Death Raider every month. They're not just like waiting a year and a half or 2 years or 8 months or whatever. And then at the end, when everything's done, everybody who bought the PDF gets the PDFs. They get the download for the PDF, or the books get shipped to them. So I really wanted to fill that space that I thought, I wouldn't say it's a weakness, but I would just say those are the spaces in the crowdfunding business model that I'm like, man, especially, dude, this is my first. first big pencils and writing, like,
Mhm.
oh, why should we take a chance on Rob Hunter? What's he giving us that's different than what
Yeah. Oh, I think about
experienced
that all the
guys?
time.
I mean, technically, Ethan is my competition,
Yeah.
and he would be a success if he was still at DC. He'd be a success crushing it at Marvel, but he already did Marvel. He already did DC. He
Mhm.
wanted to do his own thing. So he is my competition. So
Yeah.
what am I going to deliver that's different than what a
Yeah.
superstar who's an amazing writer and an amazing artist, you know?
I've
So,
never seen this on a campaign before too. This is a great idea. I mean, just I like because I backed a lot of whether they be on Indiegogo or Kickstarter. I backed a lot of campaigns. I don't know if I've seen this before. So I
I
think
don't
it's a
think
great
so.
idea.
Yeah.
I think
If
it's a
someone
great
is,
idea.
thank you. I appreciate it. And then the synergy is the merch that's
Mhm.
already available for it. So if you scroll, there's a bunch of really cool Death Raider watches
That's
and
wow. You made a bunch
Ethan,
of watches. Wow.
yeah, watches, and there's even some skull jewelry too to go with it. That if anybody's into that stuff, they can go for it in rings. Um, Ethan, when he was talking about this Wednesday night, he goes, "Oh, okay, cool." He goes, "A bunch of PDFs. There's the books." And he goes, "It looks like Rob Hunter has a jewelry store." So, and I was just like, hell yeah, yeah. Was because all the other stuff will help fund and help push us to those stretch goals. So people, you know, uh, the book, I don't have to sell as many books to still get the downloads to people, and
Mhm.
still hit that first stretch goal and get the downloads and the monthly downloads. Cause I think it's a really important way to be different than everybody else's stuff. And I kind of, I think people probably, even though people are really patient and they're being really awesome with Comicsgate crowdfunding, I think there is a little bit of them that is missing it. I mean,
Mhm.
there's gonna be the people that won't even look at it. They're going like,
Right.
dude, I just want to read the whole story at once. And
Right.
then there's the people that are like, holy shit, dude, Rob gets better every fucking month. And that is
Mhm.
another part of it. I want people to
Yeah.
go, he's getting better every month. Like these pages are better because the response I've been getting from the tune-up cover, and I can just look at the tune-up cover versus cover A. There's
Mhm.
a big difference in the art. There's a big difference in a couple of the first pages than the cover because I did the cover after I'd already drawn 3 or 4 pages, and like my page one, I still want to redraw page one. I know
Mhm.
for schedule and deadline, I would have to be done with the book and then I can go back. If I'm
Mhm.
completely finished with the book, maybe I'll take some of the pages and redo them. But yeah, actually, I want people to see that. I want to see people to go, holy crap, or like, hey, dude, you didn't back this book by Rob, but have you seen the latest fucking chapter? Look at this,
Yeah.
and they're like, holy shit, dude, this
And
is
that
way
keeps
better.
that builds hype too. That
Yes,
builds
yeah, yeah. I hope so. I hope so. So
yeah. People
we
keep
will,
talking
we
about
will see. Nobody, if I could predict the future, you know, you'd see a Ferrari parked behind me.
it.
Because
Yeah.
I had played Lotto like 4 times. They're like, Rob, is that your studio? I'm like, no, I'm shooting from my garage because, well, I got 3 Ferraris back there. So they're like, what is this, dude? What was this humble brag? I'm like, yeah, it kind of is.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. So you said cover A and B. Is it the same book, fully colored inside, or is it?
Yeah, cover A and B really are the differences, the covers.
Yeah, okay. I was just
Yeah.
making sure. And
Yes.
then the
Yeah.
midnight is black and white.
Yeah. That's the black and white because there are a lot of people who they're like, hey, dude, we really like what you're doing in pencils and ink, and we want to see it. We want to just see the pencils and inks. So
And how many pages is it?
it's 64 to start, but that's the stretch goals. Like I have a to be announced on the rest of the stretch goals, but most of the other stretch goals are more pages. So it was like in 10-page increments. The plan is 64 to 74 to 84, and then I'm not sure if I have it. I have it all outlined out 94 and then 100, or
Mhm.
it goes from 84 to 100 because obviously my outline's a little different because it's not like I'm going to just I've already had it plotted out like, well, how's the story end if it's 100 pages versus how's the story end at 84 pages or 74 pages. So
Yes, I mean this is crazy deal. So what's the we've talked about the art, we've talked about all this stuff. What's the story and inspiration behind Death Raider?
Death Raider he's a Marine, he's a Marsoc Marine Raider, and him and his team get ambushed. He gets effed up, and because of the circumstances in the ambush, he ends up with an ability. But he ends up with an ability that everybody on the military base, while they're working on him because of his he's critically injured, everybody sees. This isn't like, he secretly has powers. Everybody fucking sees he's got the power. He's got a power, and they're like, "Whoa, what happened? What just happened?" And he doesn't want to be a lab rat, and his commander doesn't want him, like, "Oh no, this guy's going to get grabbed. He's going to get thrown on a black site, sponsored by some corporation, and he's going to be a guinea pig until the day he drops dead." So he builds up the suit because Anna helps him escape, who's the co-star of the book. And he knows that the people that are after his ass, it's the military, it's the dark, evil, giant corporation, it's the dark forces are after their ass, and they're chasing them. And if he wants revenge for his team that's been killed, and he knows if he's going to keep him and Anna safe, he needs to build out a suit. And because of the ability he has, he actually he keeps learning more and more as the story progresses. So it gets to a point where he builds out his Death Raider suit, and away the story goes. And that's actually where the intro is. We're the beginning of the book is we're introduced to Death Raider right from the beginning, because I always knew that if I did a book, I wanted to grab the attention of the reader right from the beginning. I'll grab your attention and show you a bunch of what the character can do and all the cool stuff, and then I'll explain how he became the badass that he is. So,
Gotcha.
That's the rundown. And there's like a couple people have asked me, they're like, "Hey, is this a one shot? Is this a volume 1 and that's it? We'll never see it again?" And I'm like, as long as the campaign does decent, this is 3 volumes. So
cool.
And that, which means 300 pages. If everything works out the way it's supposed to, this bad boy is going to be a 300-page story.
So is this a story you've had for a while?
This is I literally am taking lots of ideas that I've had for stories and characters, and I'm realizing that I'm putting them all into a stew. And Death Raider is this is the stew where I'm taking, oh, wouldn't it be cool to do this? And I'm like, I want that for Death Raider. I want that in the Death Raider story. I'm like, oh, I really like this about science fiction. And I'm like, oh, I could do that in Death Raider. Like a lot of the stuff that I've had interested in other stories, I'm realizing I'm taking parts and pieces of other stories I've had, and making them, Death Raider's getting all the good stuff. So
that's cool. So he had the power after the ambush? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure.
No, yeah. And in fact, without giving too much away, him and his team, they're already juiced up. They've got synthetic juice in them. Yeah. So they're kind of, they're more than normal. They're not like, they're less than Captain America, but more than just, the standard,
right.
So, they're a little faster, they're a little stronger. And then the ambush happens and he ends up with, more than extra, and you'll see why. How this is the one thing when I'm talking about this story. You know how when you go into the movie, not in the movie theater, but did you ever go into Blockbuster? Because you're a lot younger.
Yes, I remember. It was tragic when it went out of business. It was tragic.
So when you go into Blockbuster and you read the back of a movie,
yeah,
and they fucking tell you the whole thing pretty much.
Yeah, or they tell you stuff you're like, that's not really,
it's nothing.
Yeah,
and I do have this fear when I promote the book. I don't want to just give people a summary of what happens, because some of the back of those DVDs would you had a freaking summary of the whole thing.
Mhm.
And you're just like, well, are you interested in watching it? You know what's
Yeah.
going to happen, but do you still want to watch it? And
Yeah.
then other things would be nothing of what was on the back of that, especially some of the older, some of the movies from the 80s and stuff. They wouldn't tell you anything besides it was Sylvester Stallone was in it, who was the pretty female.
And in comic books, they often, like, if you look in discourse, or if you look up like certain storylines or just whatever, or people review a story, they'll basically just tell you the entire thing. It's like, all right. I mean,
yeah, now you don't need to read it.
Well, I mean, it's like I remember there was one where it was like, and it was a YouTuber I really liked, but it was like, thankfully I had read it, but he was like top 10 comics, like, oh, Watchmen, what's Watchmen about? And then he gives the whole entire ending. I'm like, that's like the biggest twist. I mean, I knew the ending going into Watchmen, but that was my fault. It wasn't anyone else's fault. I just looked it up. But it's like, you can't tell the whole story. Like, you've got that intrigue where it's like, it's already, what I need. You've got the art that's selling it too.
Yeah.
And is this the first comic you've written?
Yes. Yep. This is the first book I've ever written. So,
did you ever like aspire to be a writer? Because I know some people just draw. Or did you?
I knew I didn't want to have to move to New York City to be an editor. So, and usually when I have a problem with a movie or a comic book, it's the story. And even while I was working in the industry the whole time, my problems usually were with the story, not the artwork. So yeah, I always thought I wanted to write comic books, but I knew the way to it is to be a penciler first.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Now I will be right back. I need 2 minutes.
Take your time.
All
right. So I could get you. All right. So everyone, make sure to check out Death Raider. This has been. This story looks kick-ass, man. It looks so great. And if you have any questions for Rob when he gets back, leave them in the chat. We'll absolutely make sure that we get those sorted out. I know I want to talk about a lot of, the books that inspired him to get where he is. And these ones, the Lanterns, I know he worked in Green Lantern and Red Lantern. And those look great. Oh, Batman. Oh, wait, what Batman comics did he do? Let me look this up. I know he did. New Suicide Squad, I know, was like a big hit. People really like that. That lineup is really interesting, too, with those characters. I like the Uncanny. Of course, I'm a big Uncanny X-Men guy. I think that's my favorite series ever, if I'm being honest, right now. I don't know. Oh, what's up? You back?
Yeah, I'm back.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, what inspired you to get into because I know you mentioned more specifically, what were your favorite comics growing up? Because everyone has their favorites.
Well, funny enough, X-Men and Iron Man. And
oh, really?
You can see the influence. You can see the influence. The Death Raider is a big armored suit, which is very Iron Man-ish. And he's got yes. Yeah. He's got, but they're not claws. Yeah. They're plasma blades.
Did you ever play Halo?
Yeah, dude, I still play. I'm playing. Was it Halo Infinity?
Halo Infinite. I never played the story. I only played the multiplayer. How's the story? Because I always felt that Halo 1, 2, and 3 at least had great stories.
The story is. It just feels like a generic continuation. It's nothing fantastic, but I play multiplayer now. I played the campaign, and then I went to multiplayer. And to be honest, part of my workout is riding a recumbent bike because I can't play video games unless I'm on a recumbent bike. I'm one of those people that get the motion sickness. So, and you can see the big time Halo influence in his suit too.
Oh, yeah.
Did
you play a lot of? I didn't know that about you. That you played. Yeah, I could see almost like some Call of Duty, but more so, especially that Halo influence and
Halo and Gears of War.
Gears of War. Oh,
yeah.
I never played much of it, but I know everyone loves that series. That's one of those ones I never. Those heavy, like I think early 2000s, especially the shooters were such a big
Mm-hmm.
thing. Growing up, and even like early 2010s. I mean, I guess still they never really died out, did they? But like those
No.
really hardcore metal ones, like Gears
Yeah.
of War and Halo and Call of Duty.
Yeah, I actually the latest Gears of War that came out. I don't even know what number that is. I haven't been able to play that.
Mm-hmm.
It's really when I try to play it, it really makes me sick.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I get really bad motion sickness with it, and I've noticed that one of my favorite games to play, but it's really the multiplayers, the servers are really shitty now. Is Titanfall 2,
Mm-hmm.
and Titanfall 2, I realize the maps are very repetitive,
Mm-hmm.
which is good for me because if I don't have to think about where I'm going, then I don't get sick. But if I have to think about where I'm going, and you know how Gears of War, the way the characters can hide behind stuff,
right? Yeah, the cover system.
Yeah, exactly. That makes the camera move more, and the more the camera moves,
the more sick it makes you.
Yeah,
I remember I never get sick during video games, and it was the first mission of Black Ops 3. I remember made me when there's one part where they're on a turret, and I actually got nauseous because the truck just crashes. And it was I don't know why. So we've got your Wolverine. You read. I remember we've talked about it before, but what really inspired me honestly to start working in comics, because I went to film school, was Chris Claremont's X-Men run.
Yes, yep. I remember you're a huge fan of that. You were talking about that with Shane Davis on Shane's live stream too.
Yeah, it's my favorite. And I'm like 260 issues is where I'm at. So obviously you're inspired by that. Did you have any? Would you? I assume that run is what you read a lot of, right?
What's funny is, for the most part, what inspires me is the bad stuff. What inspires me is the stuff that I didn't like and I thought could have been better. How I would do it better. And I see that a lot of what I do now and a lot of what I create is what I think is a bad idea, but could be good. How could I make it better? Like Weapon X, that story, they hyped the hell out of it. But one, they put it in those weird 8 pages
Marvel
at a time,
Comics Presents,
which really hurt the pacing of it. And Wolverine was never in a cool costume. He's like naked most of the time.
He has the massive thing on his head. I know my friend Bobby speaks very well costume with. I'm trying to find it. I ended up buying it at a discounted price because I knew I had to. Sorry if you hear that.
Yeah. It's fine. It's fine.
Trying to find it. I have my weapon. Well, it's somewhere around here. Anyway, I have Weapon X, so I do need to read that still. But that was Barry Windsor Smith. I know I love his art. I love that one issue 204. Yeah, 204, where they have Lady Deathstrike just beating the crap out of him in the woods, and they have that. You could tell inspired that.
I'm very inspired by that issue. That's Jim Lee, Weiss Bortasio, a lot of guys were inspired by that. I never even realized that. My buddy from Cuber School, he had that book, and he was flipping through it, and he goes, you want to see why Jim Lee does what Jim Lee does? And he's flipping through, and he's like, see this panel? This is, this is Jim Lee takes this panel and redoes it again and again, over and over again. And a lot of people have said that, where Jim Lee takes the best of his favorite artists and he just, crams them all into, one kind of thing, into the Jim Lee. Rob Liefeld is actually talking about that, how Jim takes the best of Neil, what he likes the most of Neil Adams, what he likes the most of Barry Windsor Smith. And, he that's what his Uncanny X-Men run was.
Oh, it wasn't
what he liked the most.
What was it?
It was 2 something. It was 211 or 209 or some shit like that.
Let me see.
You also, if you like Barry Windsor Smith's art on that type of stuff, you have to get his Conan Red Nail story, because that stuff's even cooler.
Red Nail?
Yeah, it's called Red Nails, and it's like he did a couple of issues of it, and that stuff is even linier and
205. I was one off. Okay.
Yeah. So his Conan issues, Red Nail story, which they probably reprinted multiple times in a trade paperback. That Windsor Smith is even cooler artwork.
All right, I'll keep it. So, who are your favorite artists then?
My favorite artists are Jim Lee, David Finch, Art Adams,
Mm-hmm.
Weiss Portacio.
Mm-hmm. Is it Weiss? Is that how it's pronounced?
I think so. I think
thought
it is.
Wills.
I have no idea. I always
okay.
kill everybody's name anyways.
Have you ever met him?
No.
Okay, so maybe
him.
You met him.
I inked him on one cover for DC, which was awesome to do. So
which one was that?
Batman Superman issue.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, I forgot you did that too. Yeah.
It was the one where Batman is in like a jet bat car or some shit, and Superman's flying next to it.
So you mentioned like your X-Men and Wolverine, influence. Gambit, I guess you worked on too. Were you ever a DC guy at all? Because I know you did most of your career was at DC.
My brother and I, when we buy comics, when we were kids, it kind of would be like whatever comic would grab your attention. We would be like, oh, we want to get this issue this month. We liked, just because they seemed different and they were colorful, we liked All-Star Squadron, because those characters were so different than the Uncanny X-Men, and it was the 40s. Like it part of it wasn't cool. Like we're like, the timing is weird, but at the same time, it wasn't really history. Like that was that weird. Hitler had the destiny of spear, so the really powerful heroes couldn't go over and just attack Hitler and end World War II immediately. I think the Japanese leader had another magical item, so they couldn't do the same thing to him or some shit. So we thought that All-Star Squadron was kind of neat for DC. But we were mostly like, we didn't grow up with that much money, so we each got one. We got to pick one comic book, and usually what we do is we'd fight over Uncanny X-Men. Like, no, you got to buy Uncanny X-Men last month. It's my turn. So one of us would get the Uncanny X-Men issue, and then it was whatever would catch our attention would be the other comic book. And then as we got older and we got a little more money, you'd walk out of the newsstand with like 5 or 10 comic books, and you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. So
well, you guys got to, I assume even if only one of you kept it, you guys like let each other read it, right? Or no?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
I was going to say, you guys just like, you have to fill the other in on the story, I guess.
No. There was a point where, we were probably like, I was 10, my brother's 2 years younger than me. So he's like 8. We just had this wooden box next to the bunk beds on the floor, and it would have all of our comic books just stacked up in there. So, there was an issue of G.I. Joe, there was some X-Men stuff, there was, whatever. Sometimes we get free comics from, friends of the family that knew we liked comics. And they were the comics that, because back in the day on newsstand, the newsstand, to get the credit for the unsold books, all they had to do was send back the covers. So they'd rip the covers off of the books, and then those comics would go into the garbage. Well, a lot of people realized, most of the whole comic has just been thrown away. So they would pull them out of the dumpsters behind the stores. So there was a ton of comics that would, be in society with no covers that, you give someone's kids that liked free comic books. Like if you'd ever go to a rummage sale and you're looking for comics, like I did that as a teenager because I was a big collector, half the comics you would come across would be comic books with no covers because they were all pulled out of the dumpsters.
Wow.
People wanted to read them. You'd be like, oh my God, none of these books have covers. And then you're like, oh yeah.
Now people buy comics just for the covers and don't even read the damn things. Because there's so many times I was at a store. I was like, oh, I like the cover of this. I'm like, okay, but am I actually going to read this? And I was like, no. I'm like, then I'm just going to, this is $4. This is $5. I'm not going to, why would I spend this? I'd rather not do that.
Yeah.
You spend that $5 on something else or save it to invest in something that I actually
buy a trade paperback. Buy a trade paperback with a story that is good and it's an artist you follow. Like you look at the market today and you're just like, you can't blame the artist like Arthur Adams. Like if Marvel and DC are like, hey, would you like to do, X amount of covers this month?
Mhm.
And he knows not only is he going to get paid to do the covers, he's going to sell the original artwork for
A ton
5
of
to
money.
10 times what he just got paid to draw them. You can't say no to that stuff, but
Yeah.
there's so many comics where you just want the cover, and who wants the comic? Why would you spend $5 on a comic for just the Arthur Adams cover? Because you can't even pronounce the dude's name who drew the inside. It's a guy you've never heard
Yeah.
of before.
Yeah.
You look at it and you can tell he drew it on a computer, and there's not that, I call it the comic book flavor. It doesn't even have
Yeah.
a comic book flavor. It just looks like, oh, did you want to do storyboards?
Yeah.
It's generic, and then there's generic color over top of it. Like, ugh, it's not a comic book. It's like a
Yeah.
mass-produced piece of
There are some comics
something.
where I look at the art and it's like too digital, where it's like I almost want that. Like I like the clean look. I like Jim Lee, but even Jim Lee's art, you could tell that like someone, that he took the time and just just actually pencils it out. But then you have some comics that are just too digital.
Well,
That are,
like the artist decided, oh, someone's going to color this really heavy.
Mhm.
So why would I even bother trying to render it?
Mhm.
And if I'm from another country and there's no market for this Marvel artwork anyways, why would I they're thinking if they can draw the page in half the time with half the work in it, why not? They don't
Right.
really care. They're never going to read it. Maybe they speak English, maybe they don't speak English. They're going to get paid the same no matter what. So, that's what they do, and you can tell. And you're just like, and you can tell when you read it. You're like,
Mhm.
and then with a really bad story, with a lot of the stuff that they push into the comic books, how preachy they are, they're like,
Oh.
dude, what happened to the action adventure?
The escapism, God forbid. God forbid you want to escape into a comic book and not,
Yeah.
you pay more now than you did back in the day to get less, not even just
Yes.
less story. Because one of the things is, okay, I understand like finding that balance between a million panels on a page and text. Like as much as I love Claremont, there's no doubt about it that he was overly wordy at times, right? Like there are
You
times where
see
I'm
those
like,
word balloons just packed in on and
yeah.
between the characters.
He's describing what is clearly happening in the Nightcrawler is teleporting from me. I can see it. He disappears and he's somewhere else. You don't need it. Or like Colossus turns his skin to steel. I know. It's pretty apparent what's going on. So sometimes they do stuff like that. And I love it. But like, yeah, I mean, finding that balance. But then there are times where it's just like all these pages where there's barely any words, or there's the action goes so quick, and I'm like, really? That was $5? Nothing happened that entire time. And
Yeah,
then, or if it did happen, it's not memorable. Like you think about how many classic stories would come out every year. And then it's like, now, I mean, I guess there's stuff sometimes, but usually it's indie scene.
That was the biggest motivator to do Death Raider. Was I wanted to do a project where people will go, oh, I want to be a comic book artist because of that project. Because that's the reason I became a comic book artist is because of like Todd McFarlane's Amazing Spider-Man run, his Incredible Hulk run, Jim Lee's Uncanny X-Men run, Weiss Portacio's X Factor run, Art Adams, his annuals that he did. That's why I became a comic book artist. And I really didn't get to work on that kind of stuff. I worked on some cool projects, and then I worked on a lot of stuff that nobody ever cared about and nobody would ever look at again. And I would just be like, there's absolutely no reason for this stuff to be this bad. Besides an editor who just is trying to make the deadlines and a writer who doesn't know the book or he doesn't care. Like writers, if you want to use certain characters, you have to plan those out and you have to actually ask. You
have
say,
to ask permission.
Yeah, you got to ask permission. You say, hey, I always bring this up because I remember it so well because it was burned into my memory. Is Mel Ruby and I were on Excalibur, and the story that was in Excalibur that we drew was horrific. You literally could have just said, hey, Mel and Rob are going to do 6 issues of Excalibur, and I need 6 of the X-Men villains that everybody likes to see. That would have been one in each book, would have been amazing compared to the trash that was written that nobody cares about. Nobody's ever going to look at again. You literally could have done, all right, this issue is Juggernaut, and we're gonna do a Sabretooth issue. We're gonna lead it up. We're gonna have this is all gonna be connected, and at the end, it's gonna be the Sentinels. And you won't even know. Like Excalibur might die. Why Captain Britain's fighting the Sentinels? Why is he? It could have been this amazing, cool. No, it was, and literally, if it had been something like that, and it was amazing, Mel would have never worked for Phenom. Mel would have been his career would have. That was that point where you look at certain guys and you look at their careers. That would have been the point where Mel's career should have rocketed to the stratosphere. The way Todd McFarlane's Hulk took him to Amazing Spider-Man, and that took him off. Or like Jim Lee. Like Jim Lee had a mediocre run on Alpha Flight, but it showed Marvel that he was getting his shit done on time. Yeah, that he was improving. And his Punisher was where all of a sudden people started realizing who Jim Lee was.
Right.
Well, did we lose you for a second?
No, I'm still here. I just had to. My camera was skipping, so I just.
Yeah, I noticed that before. You had some weird pauses.
Yeah, I don't know. So I just literally unplugged it and plugged it back in. I think I fixed it. No, I'm still here. I'm still listening.
So, dude, that was my biggest motivator. I wanted to work on something that matters. And you look at in comic books all the time now, dude. There's these amazing writers in comic books that they have this technical ability. They're like, as a writer, they're technically fantastic, but they don't know anything about the books. And you'll read a book and go, this was well written. This dialogue was done well. And nobody's ever going to give a fuck about this comic book ever. It's already forgotten. Like by the time you turn that last page, it's already forgotten because this writer used trash characters. These villains, nobody cares about. Nobody gives a shit about. And Marvel and DC do that constantly now. It's all these writers who, dude, they're filling in schedule gaps.
Yeah, I mean, and here's the thing, you could make minor characters work. That's what the whole Suicide Squad thing started as, even though I feel like with your run, correct me if I'm wrong, they actually had some bigger, like Black Manta's not a Z-lister, Deathstroke is not a Z-lister, Harley Quinn is not, you were working with a pretty, but you can.
That was a bummer. Deathstroke was gone after the first issue. That first issue of Suicide Squad I got to work on. Yeah, and then he was gone, and I'm like, and also, Deadshot. Deadshot was in a wheelchair for the rest of my Suicide Squad run.
How did that happen? I guess there's a lot of ways that could happen on a Suicide Squad mission.
And it was really weird, but they had Reverse Flash in there, and it was when he had the weird rusted metal suit, but he was hurt. Like he didn't want to admit that he something was wrong with him, so he didn't. His speed powers didn't really work that well. So it was the coolest. Some of the coolest images I got to work on was it Man-Bat? Is that his name? Just because it was cool. Yeah. They were they ended up with all those clones. Ra's al Ghul's daughter made a bunch of clones of him, so then he's a throwaway character, but That was
they always result in almost always result in the stupidest or the weirdest.
It dilutes the character. The character's not cool anymore. He died again.
Sinister works, but even then there was a point where I was like Mutant Massacre, where it's they would resurrect characters that I'm like I didn't. The only reason I cared was that they died. Like Blockbuster, Marvel's Blockbuster, which most people probably don't even know existed. I didn't. I was like, oh, this is interesting. There's Marvel, and then he dies. And I was like, oh, okay. And then they bring him back. I was like, look, and again, I love Chris, but I was like, Chris Claremont, no one wanted this character back. Not a single person vying for this character.
Well, I still remember from Mutant Massacre when Colossus he's fighting
yes.
the tornado guy, and he has all the ninja stars stuck in him. Yeah, Riptide, and he kills them.
Yeah,
because Colossus has seen so many people killed. All of those Morlocks, all these
that's
poor
like an
Morlocks.
unforgettable moment.
Yeah, all those poor Morlocks have been just brutally murdered, and he gets a hold of Riptide and he breaks his neck, and then what do they do? Yeah, he's just a clone, and he immediately gets brought back. Oh, here's the team again, and you're just like, and be honest, that's what Marvel with the multiverse.
Oh my God,
that's the problem with that. Like, you can kill Aunt May and then you can bring her back.
Yeah,
you can bring her back.
It's a slightly different version, or you could and this is one of the things. Like I got into comics. I know you did a lot of New 52 work, and they had some hits. But I was just getting in, and I remember that was what was new and it was on the shelves. And there were some characters, to be fair, apparently this run was great. I just read a bad issue and just wrote it off because of it. But they had Mr. Freeze's New 52 origin. And if you've never read it, because I was like, oh, I want to read some origin stories. And the comic shop owner was like, here you go.
Mm-hmm.
Here's this Mr. Freeze. I was like, great, I love Mr. Freeze. And then they made it where Mr. Freeze didn't know his wife and was just a psycho protecting this woman he didn't. And I was like, that destroys. Why would you ever do? And I was like, all right, what's the point of these reboots of these? And again, their comics have had reboots for a while, but there were some things like they were changing characters in ways that I was like, I don't like that. Just defeats the entire. I'll just read the old stuff then, where at least they had the character, you know.
Well, I don't know the exact reason why they changed. I don't know the reason at all why they changed Mr. Freeze at all, but I suspect it's for the same reason that, when you watch a superhero movie, and it's different than the comic book, like the costume's different, or some of the names or the story's different. Mm-hmm. It's because the thing is if you make a movie and it literally is like 4 issues of whatever the comic book was, are you the genius, or the guy who wrote the comic books is the genius, and all you did was make a movie version of the comic book?
Right. So they want to put their own stamp on it. Right.
Especially when you think about it, think about royalties and toys. Like a lot of times they make more money off the toys than they do the movie. Like the movie might be a big hit, and then the toys make twice as much money, the Legos and the action figures, because the merchandise just keeps coming. Think about how much it costs to make a t-shirt, how much they sell it to you for. And, there's 19 versions, there's 19 different t-shirts you can get for a successful movie and all of that stuff. And so if you're the guy who changes the character a little bit, or changes the costume design a little bit, now you might get a piece of that.
Mm-hmm. And I understand that totally.
Yeah. So you put your stamp on it, and all of a sudden you're like, hey, look at me. I got a check for $600,000 or something, just because I changed Flash's costume.
Yeah, I give him like a belt buckle or some shit like that.
Well, I really think that's why Jim Lee redesigned all the DC characters.
I think that's why.
Yeah, when they pulled Jim Lee in and they said, we want you to do this, and we want you to do that, and we want you to do all these designs, Jim was thinking, because that was toys, because that's when DC started doing the DC Direct. And Jim Lee's like, oh my God, what are my checks going to look like? Now he's going to get a piece of the Green Lantern action figure and all those characters, because they're all Jim Lee's designs.
And some of them work better than others, but none of them stuck, and there's a reason. Like, I understand the mentality.
They were all too similar. They were all too similar.
Well, I understand the mentality was they went through this weird phase, like, we want to make them more practical. And I was like, they were like, oh yeah, Superman and Batman shouldn't have the underwear on the outside. I'm like, because that's goofy. I'm like, no, it's now, like, at this point it's so iconic. Like, I'm sorry, Superman and Batman, this is my honest opinion, they should always have that underwear on the outside. I know people think it looks goofy, especially Superman, like, oh, it's goofy. Okay. You know what else is goofy? Like, you can critique any aspect of the character. Like, or even they changed Power Girl's design, I remember, because they were like, wanted to be more, I don't know. And I was like, in Black Canary's design, there was these awful generic costumes in the New 52. Yeah. And I was like, why? Like, who do you think the market audience for Power Girl is? You really think they're gonna buy the book now? Especially you're gonna tell Amanda Connor that the way she was drawing this woman was not right? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, you had brought up 52 before, and you're like, what was the point of 52? And part of the point of 52 was trying to relaunch all the books to try to bring up the shitty books to make them sell better than sell as well or sell better, just sell better. But all 52 did was it showed everyone the healthy, strong books that were before 52 are the healthy, strong books for 52. Like the Green Lantern books still were decent. Before 52 and during 52.
Yeah. Justice League is still going to sell. It doesn't matter.
Justice League was still a strong book. The Batman books were all still strong books.
What a surprise.
The books that suffered were the books that were suffering before because you didn't have the right creative team on them in the first place. And you didn't, dude, remember how bad Superman was?
Oh, the jeans, right? They gave him like jeans or some shit. I remember looking at that cover and I was like, no, I'm not buying that.
The 52 Superman was really rough. The Green Arrow 52, like that wasn't the right team to be on Green Arrow at the time. There was all these like the places where they should have taken more chances were on those books that were already weak. The Rise of Frank Miller. They put a brand new penciler who wanted to write. They put him on Daredevil because Daredevil was going to get canceled. And look at what he did. Like, look what happens when nobody gives a shit about a book except for the guys that are working on it.
Bringing that up, like X-Men was literally a dying book that was already on. It was like
X-Men was on reprints and stuff.
Yeah, it was like I think like 70 to something, maybe even 60 to like 90 something was 93. It was like all reprints. And even then, it was still bi-monthly. They couldn't even get it monthly with reprints. Sometimes that does, or even New Teen Titans, like that had been canceled. What, twice? Teen Titans. They just put the
Titans is a constant. They want Titans to be what it was with George
80s.
Perez in the 80s, and it's never because it literally at some points Titans sold better than Uncanny X-Men. And
I believe it.
Titans
that crossover issue between the two is amazing. Also,
yes.
The
It's never going to be that again. Do you watch any wrestling?
I don't, but my co-host who's on my channel, Bobby, he is a huge wrestling. Like his style is like that mixed with heavy metal, mixed with like Dale Keown and Steve Black.
You can see that some of the problems with wrestling are some of the same problems with Marvel and DC. And you can see how the companies want to be the brand and they want to be the reason why you follow the comic books. They did that with wrestling. WWE always tries to make themselves the biggest, the coolest part of it. Like literally, hey, most of these wrestlers are interchangeable. They can come and they go, but you stick around to watch WWE because of WWE. They're the brand. The Rock isn't the brand. Stone Cold's not the brand. It's WWE and the wrestlers are the brand. Marvel and DC, after Image, they wanted to do the same thing, and you can see how so much of why they suffered is because they want to be the brand. Because especially now because of movies, it's a double-edged sword because it's the movies are you want the movies to be super successful so that it helps the comic books, but then they don't advertise the comic books with the movies like
no,
most
not
people
at all.
do.
Which is the most obvious market. Like obviously you should have before the movie starts, even a 30-second ads would have been the easiest choice, and they like don't do that. I'm like,
yeah, hey, check out your local comic book store. Here it is. Your local comic book store is 5 miles away. How is that? But no, none of that. And then if you're the creative people, why would you write? Think about it. Like, hey, what if someone reads Death Raider and says, "Oh wow, this guy should be working on Wolverine. Give him a call." They're like, "Well, he's been talking shit about Marvel for the last 10 years." And it's like, I don't care. Obviously, he's influenced by Iron Man and Wolverine and X-Men and stuff. give him a call and let's get him on Wolverine. And I'd get a call and go, oh, hey, who is this? And they're like, oh yeah, I'm the editor on Wolverine. And I'm like, okay, cool. And as I'm working on the next Death Rider, and they're like, we want you to do Wolverine. And I'd be like, why would I do Wolverine? So if it's really cool, you guys can make a Wolverine movie and I get a check for $20,000.
Yeah.
Hey, Rob, we ripped off all your ideas and we made $1 billion Wolverine movie.
Yeah.
Here's your $20,000 check. But you get to come to the premiere.
Oh
boy.
Yeah.
Look, it's me. Look at me. You know,
exactly.
I'm on the red carpet. Look, I'm getting a photo with the new Wolverine actor, and his suit cost more than I made off of Wolverine.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. If the Hunter Ninja Bear, movie comes out, I feel like that'll be different.
No, it is but that's because of Tom and Joe.
Yeah, it's because of Tom and Joe, exactly. Because they
now if Tom and Joe sold the company to, like if Marvel.
Oh, then suddenly it's over. Forget us.
Yeah. Unless there's contracts, there's like, oh, they bought the company from Tom and Joe, and it becomes a movie, and I'd be like, oh, look, it's me on the red carpet. That would be it. There'd be no checks, there'd be nothing. So.
And that's another thing too. And again, I got into comics through the movies, to be fair.
Yeah,
but it's also because they don't have comics on anywhere but comic shops. And I'm not going to walk into a comic shop blind if I'm not into comics already. Like, I had already read my first comic book by the time I went into a comic book shop. Like,
dude, comic book stores got greedy. Not comic book stores. The comic industry got greedy when they started seeing those. Dude, because direct sales, those comic book stores, they buy those books. Mm-hmm. Look at this is what we've sold. Yay. They didn't. No one wanted to. Because when a comic book goes to newsstand, they have to. The numbers are, for every comic book that sells, you have to print 3 comics. 2 get thrown away and 1 gets bought. They didn't like those numbers. They didn't like how much they would lose on the comics that were thrown in the dumpster. So they just wanted to sell comic books to the comic book store, mm-hmm. But it cut their wrists. It slowly cut their wrists. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, every pro basically I talk to or hear about, almost all of them, like even in the chat, Travko, he says, my first comics came off a rack at Walmart. No one's first comics, like I've learned about superheroes through movies and TV shows. No one first learns about comics through walking into a comic store unless their parent who's already into comics takes them into the comic book store. Yeah. Even then, they probably lent them some of their old comics prior to that moment.
Yeah, think about where comic book stores are. There's a few comic book stores that are actually in malls where they have mall traffic, but the leasing for stores is so expensive that there's not a lot of comic book stores in malls. Oh, yeah. The rest of the comic book stores are on like main streets where there's no parking. Yeah, there's no parking. And think about the stores that you've never walked in when you walk down a main street.
Oh, so many. Well, yeah.
Because you have no reason to.
Yeah. Yeah. It just doesn't make any sense. Like, there are comic stores that I vividly remember I'd look by and go, oh, that's Superman in the window. And I'd almost go in, but I never quite did because I was. And again, I would have, if I was in a store with my mom and there was superhero comics, I guarantee you with how into superheroes I was for movies and stuff, I would have picked it up. But they don't know, like, it's so basic to me. Like, if I could get my comics on newsstands or in magazines or in grocery stores, so that way a kid could be walking by with his mom, it's so obvious. And it just blows my mind that for 20 years, that's 20 years, and they're wondering why the young audience dips, because the young audience doesn't know you exist unless they're learning about it through movies, like I did. I learned about comics through movies, and it used to be, people would actually, like, comic books were, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think obviously it's a very different time, but they were like on their own, very valuable because people really cared about them and the story. And somewhere along the lines that got lost, and it's a shame.
Well, it's the brand is more important. The Marvel brand is more important than the product. They don't care about, they don't want you to be a superstar. They want you to just be another artist, just, make your deadlines and, that's it.
Mhm.
We don't. Superstars you have to coddle, you have to compromise, you have to return their phone calls. But another
Pay their
artist,
rates.
yeah, you got to pay them a living wage.
Yeah,
you
I
know
don't need that. You know what I mean?
that dude. Why would you
Yeah,
want that?
yeah.
Like,
Why would you want that? Yeah,
I mean,
crazy.
come on, man. You've
Yeah, you
seen
could
them.
get a living wage in Indonesia, maybe for
Yeah,
Indonesia, but you
like
want to.
when you think of how long it takes to draw a comic book page, and then you think of the local Walmart will pay you $15 an hour.
Mm,
You know, you're getting really close. If that guy isn't, if Dave Finch is going to make a lot more, he's going to have a pretty good page rate, but he's also going to sell the page for probably more than he drew what he got paid to draw it.
hmm
If you're just breaking into comic books and your page rate, you're like you're going to get such a low page rate, and then someone's probably not going to want to buy your artwork, because you're brand new and you're still learning. You're like, shit, dude, I could just go to Walmart. I'll just
hmm
get a job at Walmart.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
it's the reason to create. And look, I'm not, for example, as a new writer, I know I'm not going to make tons of money, right off the bat. But it's like the love to create is really what drives people in this point. But it's also, I've talked to so many creators that after a certain point of decades in the industry, it's almost like they go, "Who are you?" Like after a certain point, they're just kind of like, "Oh, you forgot about us when I gave like 20 years of my life?" It's
yeah. Well, you see how a lot of my peers, like, dude, to be honest, out of my class, I went in the at the Joe Cuber school. There was 102 of us, and that was because comics were booming and everybody,
Mhm.
like we had the largest class they ever had, and it was
Oh,
102.
really?
Yes, 102 kids. Like usually the classes were like 30 people or less. We had 102 people in our class. I got into comics. Uh, my buddy Dave Brewer got into comics, and then a couple other guys messed around with comics. Like, they drew a cover, they drew a pinup or whatever. But most of them didn't get into comics because the market the next year dropped, and then it kept dropping. And they're like, oh, wait, and they're living on the West Coast, and they're like, oh, wait, my buddy's in animation. And he says, because I'm a pretty good drawer, I could just draw, storyboards or in betweens for animation. And that's, dude, most people just realize that the heartache of comic books. Oh, wait, I could do a lot less work and I could work for an ad agency, you
Hmm.
know? Um, the comic book artist, Patrick Blaine? Do you remember he did some Top Cow stuff? He had a very Top Cow style. He's influenced. He was influenced a lot by obviously Jim Lee. He had some very Simon Beasley stuff. He realized how fun it was to work at doing commercial art and making more money and having getting insurance, getting health insurance and stuff. Like, hey, you got a 401k. So, and he was doing some cool stuff. And when I was at CrossGen, we were talking to him about doing coming to CrossGen, but you know, everything else treats you better and pays you better. So
Yeah, I understand that. It's that passion to create. But at the end of the day, I guess, especially in these day and age, if people really go into comics, generally that shows, despite
oh,
like with all that, like that they
it's
have a love for storytelling in the medium.
yes,
Like
yes.
I love comic books. I made
You
it as a
love comic
filmmaker,
books, yeah.
right? And it's like because I see something more potential than a lot of other people see, and I
Well,
think that
even the guys who left, even the
right.
guys who have left, say they love comic books, but they just couldn't take the industry. They couldn't take
Yeah.
the editors anymore.
Yeah, the editors seem to be. I mean, the bar seems pretty low for editors right now, so that's good for me, and for writers too, apparently. So my barrier of entry, I mean, I'm reading some of the books today, and I'm like, I cannot believe this. Not only that, this got by as in terms of like, because I beat myself up over my scripts, like any good writer does, and any good artist, I'm sure, beats himself up over their artwork. And I'm like, how do you write this, and then proud of it, send it to an editor, and they're like, this is great. This is fantastic. Let's get like a great artist to draw this. I'm like, how? To be fair, not everything I read, this is terrible.
Yeah.
But
well, I honestly, when it comes to writing, there's some really good writers. Chuck Dixon likes to say that that the comic book industry scares away the good ones, and the terrible ones are the ones that stay because they can't get a job anywhere else. But the genius of the writers isn't as much about the stories that they do, but they're convincing the editors. Like, because it's just like YouTube. Like, wait a minute, what is this guy's real content? Why does he have 1 million subscribers? Like, people who can market themselves a lot better than they actually can, than they have the ability. And in comic books, you have a lot of artists and a lot of writers that do a much better job at the marketing side than they are actually the delivering side of what the product is. And you see that in comic books a lot, where writers that are horrific, but they get job after job after job. There's a couple of famous writers that when I was working at Marvel, I was told they are amazing at their pitches, but they can't pace a comic book story to save their fucking life. They write the most boring comic books in the world, but if you read their pitch, you'd be like, holy crap, this Cable is going to be amazing for the next 2 years. So it's dude, that's
crazy.
That's the business that we're in, man. Guys that are better, they're better con men than writers. But if you can con that you can con that editor thinking you're a great writer. That's all that matters. You're going to still crank for you'll get a couple years out of it. So
well, be on the lookout for those in the audience. If you're ready to get conned by me, I got some stuff in the works.
Dude, you got to work on your conning.
I got to work on my conning. No, I look, in all honesty, look, there's a lot of things to complain about, but there's a lot to look forward to. Like, Death Raider again. Let me refresh this. Let's see if we have got any new backers during this stream. We will certainly after. I already told all my friends who I forced to buy Hunter Ninja Bear. I'm going to make sure I can take a look at. Yeah, well, look. Well, no, I didn't force anyone. I told them I was like, yeah, you should, and they were like, all right. So like three of them did. Well, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. What am I going to
Was that during the campaign? Was that during
absolutely.
Our Kickstarter
absolutely.
campaign? Nice.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
And none of them have regretted it, so that's good.
Oh, dude, everybody loves that.
Yeah, I haven't heard anyone say anything even mediocre about 100 Ninja Bear.
No.
And if you guys haven't checked that out, phenomcomics.com. But yeah.
Well, is Hunter Ninja Bear still on Indiegogo? Like, did Tom leave it in demand?
I'm not sure. I haven't because last time I mentioned it, I just told people to go to Phenom. Let me see if it's still on Indiegogo. I mean, obviously Kickstarter, the way it works is it's like it's there and then it's not.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I'm not sure. Last time I checked in on it, it was there, but that was a while ago. So
let me see. Okay, my internet's being very slow. Oh, it's still there. All right, yeah. So Hunter Ninja Bear is still on Indiegogo.
Is it like in demand? Like, did Tom just?
Yeah, it's in demand.
Okay. I just recently learned about Indiegogo, which I thought was weird, is how difficult it is to order multiple copies. You can't do it.
Oh, it's such a pain. I've had to go back and again. It's so annoying. Every other Amazon is ready one.
Yeah, I had a guy who said, "Hey man, I want 3 copies of A and I want 3 copies of B, and I can't do that on Indiegogo." And because I'm still new to all this, I'm like, "Well, let me go see what he's talking about." And I'm like, "You can't do that." Yeah. So I just said, "I go, dude, PayPal me, send me. I'll get the notice from PayPal. I'm gonna save these emails into my Indiegogo folder, and you're buying them straight from me then." And he goes, "All right, cool." And that's, I'm just like, come on, Indiegogo.
And that sucks because it also, like, part of the money, it's good, but it's also just visually, it's good to see that number. So it hurts that too. It's such a pain that you'd think they'd figure out all these little details.
I don't think they give a shit. We know they don't care. It's such a small piece of the pie compared to
all the other stuff.
You mean all the technical crap that they sell? That will it ever come out?
Yeah.
Like
He's at least come out.
yeah, like Indy, like how many like Andy Smith has a story about there were cool camera glasses that he was supposed to get that never came out. It was a snoring device that I paid for that never came out, and it's still an Indiegogo. Like if you could still go to the ad and they're saying 50% off to get in on the campaign, and you're like, dude, it's been like 4 years, and if you look at the reviews, everyone is just angry because nobody got it.
No one got
It's
it.
a total scam.
Well, at least everyone got scanned equally. You know, that's equality.
The developers of the product moved to Israel, so now they're beyond.
Oh, they're beyond. Yeah, they escaped with the money.
Yeah,
that's good.
Yeah,
that's smart.
They ran
I
away.
should do that. Yeah, just make like a stupid technical product that's not going to work, and
it'll never come out.
Yeah, and then I'll use the money to fund my comic book.
Dude, you do all these videos where you're in a lab coat and you're saying all this technical stuff.
I'll get like these. I have like these sunglasses that are they're not even glasses. They're literally just blue light glasses, and just act like I know what I'm talking about.
You get someone to CGI so that they can transition to different.
I worked in filmmaking. I could easily just manipulate it. Just get like a really well lit set. Like do some practical effects to make some stupid ass product. The problem is I've admitted all of this on camera. So
and then you sell the glasses for $250 a piece and wait for everybody to. You're like, oh my god, what am I gonna do? I don't want to have to leave the country, but I made $2 million on this campaign.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, nobody hears from Vaughn again.
Yeah, no, I'll do it absolutely. Just like mimosas down like some South American country.
Exactly. You'll change your name and you'll have a comic book out.
Yeah.
You're like, wait a minute. You have a really fake bad mustache, and it's you with a bad dye job. And you're
has anyone done that on comics yet? Yet, or maybe I should clarify. Don't do that in comics.
Yeah, don't do that in comics. I mean, we already have the buddies, all of our buddies who, their campaign was a year. They're like 2 years ago. And people are still waiting on the books.
But the thing is, they come out, so that'll be a good tagline for Death Raider to leave on before you end things. But we could say, Death Raider, it will come out.
It will come out because I have no other skills.
Okay,
I can't escape the commercial art or ads.
Yeah.
And I've broken down my back working in comic books. I can't just go get a regular job if I wanted to. It's this or nothing. So that's my guarantee. This or not. Oh, this or nothing. That's the guarantee.
Yeah. So you guys here, folks, make sure to check out Death Raider. It still should be in the chat. It should be in the description. If you need the link again, I'll just copy and paste it again. And obviously you got Death Raider. I made sure to put your YouTube channel link in my description as well. Obviously Rob on all of his socials. Anything else you want to shout out, Rob, before we end things?
No. I would just like to say that I am going to start doing some YouTube videos. I did a few, which really didn't have too much to do about comics, and I know I'm going to have to start live streaming. So I'll probably start with a couple of videos, and pre-recorded videos, and then I'll start to do the live stream. Did you watch me on the launch at all with Art T-Bear? On Pontificators.
I forget. There were like 3 different streams that were going on that same night.
Same time.
Bits and pieces. It was like 8 o'clock. I got 3 notifications simultaneously.
Yeah.
So I got parts of it. I was like splicing it up. I was like going to this one, swiping, going to this one, going to this one. So
I have plans on my YouTube that when I live stream, it's going to be kind of crazy, and people are going to be like, "What the F am I watching?" And I'll just go for it, and I'll just be regular me on like the Kings, and people will be like, wait, is this the same guy? So it'll be fun.
Sounds great. Back in Death Raider guarantees at least 50% increase in your ability to fuck shit up.
At least.
So you heard that here, folks. All right, guys, I'll tune in next week, or not even next week, actually, during the week, because I had someone reschedule. This Tuesday, I believe, I'm having an indie writer who I met at a con, Trevor Fernandez-Linkovich. So I'm going to be having him on. So tune in for that, and I'll see you guys next time. All right, it's been